The American Industrial Revolution, also known as the Second Industrial Revolution, was a significant turning point in history triggered by the invention of the Bessemer process. The American Industrial Revolution spanned from the end of the Civil War in 1865 to the beginning of World War I in 1914. It was a period of rapid invention, discovery and standardization, automation, and mass industrial production that completely transformed the United States for better or worse.
The American Industrial Revolution is important because, despite being many years ago, the era of industrialization in the U.S. still impacts us today. The Second Industrial Revolution paved the way for modern technology and societal change. Without the Industrial Revolution, there would be no modern technology, labor rights, big cities, or electricity, but also no rapid climate change, depleted resources, or high amounts of pollution. The positives of the Industrial Revolution were massive, but the impacts are numerous and still affect our lives today.
The American Industrial Revolution is also known as the Second Industrial Revolution. It followed the First Industrial Revolution, which was the period of humanity's first technological inventions, from 1760 to 1840. Britain pioneered early technological advancements in the First Industrial Revolution, using machines commercially as early as the 18th century. In 1760, the first engine, the steam engine, was invented by British engineers. Engines were then widely used throughout more wealthy European countries. While early machines may seem primitive compared to modern technology, the crude inventions of the First Industrial Revolution paved the way for the later Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Though the British and some other European countries were industrializing, few other countries also benefited. Not only was industrialization expensive, permitting any countries without surplus money from introducing mechanization, but the British also liked to keep their inventions to themselves. When Samuel Slater, a British man, wanted to move to the US, taking his knowledge elsewhere was illegal because he had been taught about machines in a British mill. Slater disguised himself as a farmer and traveled to the US regardless. And in New York, 1790, he opened the very first water-powered mill in the United States. Historians now credit Samuel Slater as the father of the American Industrial Revolution. By the British, he is known as a traitor.
While Britain was industrializing, the U.S. was a young nation, busy trying to establish itself. Before the American Industrial Revolution, the United States economy was fourth in the world, still employing the cottage industrial structure left over from the Middle Ages. Despite this, America was still globally powerful. The United States had a large, growing population and expanding territory, acquiring seemingly unlimited natural resources. The United States took advantage of North America's unexploited continent, which fueled unparalleled industrial and economic growth. After the end of the Civil War, America was in a position for substantial change.
The American Industrial Revolution introduced some of the most significant inventions in human history and some of the greatest discoveries of all time, such as the light bulb, the discovery of electrical currents, the first modern combustion engine, the telephone, and major transportation inventions such as trains and later automobiles. One of the most important inventions was the creation of the Bessemer process in 1856, the process for purifying iron into steel by blasting air into molten metal to remove impurities, producing inexpensive steel efficiently. With this invention, steel began to replace iron in the building industry. Steel was more durable and cheaper than iron, which was soft and could not handle extensive weight without frequent repairs, such as steam engines or large buildings. Because of steel, we could build stronger bridges, taller buildings, and more machines. With widespread construction of train tracks extended America's transcontinental railroads, helping connect America's vast empire during this era of invention and rapid growth.
The impact of the transcontinental railroad cannot be overstated. Whereas you used to have to ride for months on horseback, suddenly you could travel from the East Coast to the West Coast in just a week. The railroad made efficient global shipping possible for the first time, completely transforming the world economy. By the 1880s, the United States was transporting $50 million worth of goods each year. Alongside this massive expansion, there were also huge social and environmental impacts. These changes all contributed to an American sense of national confidence, and those ripples are still felt in our society today.
In the American Industrial Revolution, urbanization underwent a profound transformation. Rapid industrialization started the growth of cities as factories emerged, drawing a surge of rural inhabitants seeking employment. With the spread of mechanization in agriculture, farms were becoming increasingly more efficient. Before technology, a farm could only grow so much, and usually supplied only the local community. Now farmers could mass produce food with less labor. This meant fewer people were employed on farms, and many displaced workers moved to cities for new factory jobs. Cities like Chicago, New York, and Detroit experienced unprecedented population, leading to the rise of skyscrapers and the establishment of diverse neighborhoods. The urbanization brought economic opportunities. It also led to social challenges, like overcrowded living conditions, causing illness to spread rapidly. A dynamic shift towards an industrialized urban landscape shaped the socioeconomic fabric of the nation, setting the stage for the complexities of modern urban life.
Work conditions in factories were often harsh. Factories embraced mass production, leading to long working hours, typically 12 to 16 hours a day, with few to no breaks. 6 days a week, with grueling, often risky work. Child labor was prevalent, with children as young as 6 working in dangerous environments. Children were often chosen as factory workers because of their small stature made it easier for them to get inside machines to work. They could be paid lower wages, were more easily manipulated, and less likely to unionize. Workplace lacked safety regulations, resulting in frequent accidents and severe injuries. Workers faced exposure to hazardous material, inadequate venting, and poor lighting. The lack of worker rights meant minimal job security and low wages, contributing to widespread poverty.
Factory owners prioritized profits over employee well-being, leading to the rise of labor movements advocating for better conditions. Early labor unions in the American Industrial Revolution were part of a movement that sought not only to improve laborers' rights and conditions directly, but also had a larger social message. In the 1860s, pro-growth government parties ushered in the Gilded Age of economics, and these changes in societal structure resulted in huge social change. The disparities between the social classes grew until they can no longer be ignored, resulting in distinct divisions, including the working class, the middle class, and the new economic bracket of industrial elites. Labor unions were fighting for the elevation of the working class and the creation of a just society that celebrated hard work, honest labor, and equal rights. Labor strikes were sometimes violent or even deadly due to labor unions not having legal protections. Businesses and corporations would sometimes send armed militant forces against worker uprisings, and labor union leaders were often jailed after organizing. Still, labor unions were a major force in American society during the Second Industrial Revolution, with rapid gains in union membership nationally and widespread strikes spiking public interest and support.
Many other social matters, such as human rights issues, occurred during the American Industrial Revolution. Women were not allowed to vote or own property at this time, and were fighting for equal pay. Native Americans were being forcibly removed from the West into government-mandated reserves, and their land was free for American settlers to colonize. Waves of Chinese laborers migrated to help complete the railroads, which added diversity but also added layers to Americans' deepening racial tension, resulting in the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Black Americans were facing segregation and Jim Crow laws in the South. Looking back at these problems during the time demonstrate that despite being a great time in history for technology and U.S. economic growth, suffering and racial injustice were prevalent in the USA.
With industrialization, the environment was harmed to a point of almost no return. Factories would spew smog and soot into the air from burning coal, creating respiratory illnesses for the residents of any town near a factory. People adapted to dressing in darker clothing because of soot covering everything. The soot in some parts of the world heavily changed the ecosystem around the factories, as demonstrated by the peppered moth, which changed from white to black over time to blend in with the soot. The air pollution was not helped by the mass deforestation of American forest, expedited in the West by the construction of the Continental Railroad.
World War I marked the end of the Industrial Revolution in the U.S. The Second Industrial Revolution was truly a crucial turn in the creation of the world, and the impacts on modern life are undeniable. Today, technology has evolved considerably with the creation of efficient transportation, the internet, computers, and so much more. However, it would not have been possible without the discoveries of the industrial revolutions of our past. In the years following the Industrial Revolution, many developments have been influenced by the events of the American Industrial Revolution. America's economy has been first in the world since 1960. The women's rights movement has since won equal pay and the right to vote. Labor unions won their fight for rights in the 1930s when the Fair Labor Standards Act passed, establishing a 40-hour workweek, guaranteed minimum wage, and the official end of child labor. The National Labor Relations Act was also signed, ensuring the right for workers to organize into unions and strike. The environment has been in climate crisis since the burning of fossil fuels started in the Industrial Age. However, environmental awareness has been growing since the 1940s, resulting in things like the Clean Air Act, the growing demand for renewable energy, and the regulation of greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutions. These changes are a part of a movement to better our planet and help reverse some of the damage done, even if it is far after they should have been put in place.
In conclusion, the Industrial Revolution left an indelible mark, reminding us of the complex interplay between progress and consequence. The echoes of the Second Industrial Revolution continue to resonate in our present, shaping the world we navigate each day.